So you want to know if we are in a housing bubble similar to the one that we experienced in 2007 and 2008, right before the Great Recession? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's get to it. Welcome to the Living in Oakland, California channel. I'm Rich Fleming, your local realtor, and I'm here to teach you everything you need to know about living, working, playing, sleeping, eating, whatever, in Oakland and the rest of the San Francisco East Bay. I get so many people who do reach out to me with questions about what it's like to live here, how to transition here, what they need to know about living in Oakland and the rest of the San Francisco East Bay, and I absolutely love it. So if you've got questions, drop me a text, send me an email, give me a call, whatever works for you. Because when it comes to moving to Oakland and the rest of the San Francisco East Bay, I got your back. So one of the best things about being a realtor is everyone wants to talk to you about the housing market, what's going on in the market, whether the prices are going up, prices are going down. Everyone always cares about housing. And in the last couple of months, one of the most frequent questions that I have been getting is, are we in a housing bubble similar to the one that existed before the Great Recession in 2007 and 2008? And that's what we're going to cover today. Talk about some factors that really do make this housing situation a little bit different than what we experienced in 2007, 2008. So to understand the differences between the housing market back in 2007 and 2008 and the market we're in now, we're going to discuss three factors. And those factors are: one, the creditworthiness of buyers and now compared to 2007, 2008, the supply and demand of housing now versus then, and thirdly, mortgage interest rates. So let's start by talking about the differences in the creditworthiness of buyers now and back in the early 2000s. So back in the early 2000s, the creditworthiness of many buyers and the types of mortgage products that were available were dramatically different than what exists today as far as buyer qualifications and the types of mortgage products available. So back in the early 2000s, it was very easy to qualify for 100% financing and sometimes to even get your closing costs covered in the purchase of the home. In today's world, the ability to get that much of your mortgage financed is much more rare. So why is that important? Because it impacts the buyer's commitment to stay in their house if the housing market has its ups or downs. So if someone buys a home using 100% financing and the housing market fluctuates and the price goes down, that person has far less incentive to stay in the home than a person who has put down 10, 20, or even 30% down payment in the house. Even if the value of the house has gone down temporarily, because all markets fluctuate occasionally, that buyer who has put 20 or 30% down is far less likely to walk away from the home than someone who has no money of their own invested in the property. That situation creates more stability in the market. So another mortgage factor that we need to consider is the creditworthiness of home buyers in the early 2000s versus now. Back in the early 2000s, it was possible to get 100% financing with less than a 600 credit score without providing any proof of income or assets. That type of product is almost non-existent today. Today's underwriting standards to qualify for a mortgage are much more rigorous than they were in the early 2000s. That means that if there is a situation where there might be some financial fluctuation in the economy, in the market, once again, that home buyer has been vetted to make sure that they have reserves/savings and that they have a history of being able to support their credit obligations. So back in the early 2000s, that wasn't really the case. So when the market has a downturn and those individuals don't have the ability to refinance and cannot afford their new mortgage payment, that's when you have the problems that we faced in the Great Recession. So when you look at the housing supply challenges that San Francisco Bay Area and the rest of California have, there are really three primary causes. The first is NIMBYism, not in my backyard, or essentially the no growth, no development movement in California. Over the last 30 to 40 years, residents have really pressured their local and state politicians to make it very difficult to get new housing development built in California. Many people feel that California is already overcrowded and it's already too densely populated. And that is understandable. But the underlying problem is that you can't prevent the population from moving to California or from the population from just growing innately. And that is the problem we face. The population of California has continued to grow, but we have not built the housing to match that growing population. The second challenge is related to the first one, and that is local, regional, and state regulation and requirements. It can be very expensive and time-consuming to go through all of the regulatory processes necessary to build housing, not only in the Bay Area, but throughout California. This is related to people putting pressure on their politicians, but also the state has often seen housing development as a revenue source and made it very expensive in terms of permitting to build housing. The third challenge is the use of lawsuits and environmental law to dissuade housing development. And don't get me wrong, I am in favor of environmental protections. However, these laws and many lawsuits are used as a delaying tactic and a method to make the development of housing economically unviable for many developers. Given the extreme housing challenges that California faces, the state has finally started to take action. In 2019, the state passed a law called the Housing Crisis Act of 2019 that really starts to address some of these barriers that have been put up to the development of housing. The items enacted are not a complete solution, and the state continues to look at other ways to make the development of housing easier throughout the state. And at least they are finally moving in the right direction. And it's only because the current housing situation in California is unsustainable. So the third and final factor that is really driving the housing market now is very low interest rates on mortgages. And part of that, a significant part of that, is due to the COVID crisis we're currently living through. The Federal Reserve has essentially taken interest rates down to zero from their point of view, and they are also taking other actions to try to stimulate any part of the economy that they can. And part of the stimulus that they're doing is not only the low interest rates, but they are also buying what's called mortgage-backed securities. So the value of your mortgage to a bank is a security essentially, and the Federal Reserve is buying these securities to help provide more financing and keep the economy going during the time of COVID, because the economy has had its extreme ups and downs. So when interest rates go down, the amount of house that you can qualify for with the same payment increases. In other words, when you make your payment, you are paying less in interest and more of that is going to principal. In other words, the purchase of the actual house. So those lower interest rates that we've been experiencing over the last 9 months or so have trickled through the market and given those who are still in the position to be able to buy homes more buying power. But not just you as an individual, everyone has more buying power. And this has caused an increase in the demand for housing. It has caused an increase in the prices. So then the next question you probably have is, well, what's going to happen when interest rates go back up? And when is that going to happen? Well, the Fed doesn't let me in on their secrets, but I would hazard to guess that interest rates are going to stay low for probably at least the next year, maybe the next 2 years, especially until the employment numbers dramatically improve. So during that time, interest rates are very unlikely to go much lower than they are right now. And that additional buying power that people have due to lower interest rates has really filtered its way through the market. So I would anticipate a slowdown in the increasing prices in homes that we have seen over the last 6 months or so. So after the next year or two, if interest rates start to creep up, and they will eventually, all markets go up and down, you might start to see some price softness in the market, but you will not see the complete collapse of the real estate market that we experienced back in 2007, 2008, and so on. And that goes back to those earlier factors we were talking about. The types of mortgages available to consumers right now are way more predictable and conservative than the mortgage products on the market back in the early 2000s. And people have way more of their own personal assets wrapped into their house. It is a much bigger personal financial loss to people to even consider walking away from a house if it does have a slight value downturn. Are we facing another situation like the Great Recession of 2010? Probably not. The situation we are in with COVID and what that has done to the economy is definitely something very serious. But the underlying fundamentals of the housing market are different than they were in 2007. So this all leads up to the ultimate question people want to know. Should I buy now or should I wait? Well, I always say it is very difficult, if not impossible, for the vast majority of people to time the market. You just don't know what's going to happen. So I always say buy a home if it fits your needs and lifestyles. You need someplace to live anyway. If you are interested in buying a home to meet your needs and the needs of your family, then consider doing it primarily for that reason. Don't try to time the market at its bottom or avoid the market at its absolute top. It is cyclical. Overall, the value of homes over time steadily increases, and the extreme shortage of supply of homes in the Bay Area means that it is very unlikely that there will be any type of sustained or significant price decrease anytime in the near future. So if you have any questions about what I covered here today, or would just like to talk about what might happen in the real estate market over the next 2 months or 2 years, you know what to do. Give me a call, drop me a text, send me an email, whatever works for you. Because when it comes to helping you transition to Oakland and the rest of the San Francisco East Bay, I got your back. If you found the video helpful, please drop a like so YouTube knows to show it to other people that have similar interests to you. Hit that subscribe button, hit the bell notification so you know each and every time I put out a new video. And I'll catch you in the next video.